Teams coming, going, and everything in between. We have a playoff update and more on this week's episode of the Indy Ball Report podcast. All right, back again, episode number 238 of the Indy Ball Report podcast. Ryan's back again, and apparently there are people that follow the Instagram that don't know who you are.
Wait, really?
Yeah, seriously, I got a DM about this where I was going back and forth with the guy because he was asking like, oh, with the Jackal renovations, which we'll talk about at some point, not this week, but at some point. And he's like, oh, the Gray's going to find a permanent home. I was like, no, they weren't really meant to be a permanent thing. And he's like, oh, you know what you're talking about a lot. Like, did you work in Indy Ball? I was like, I didn't, but Ryan did. He's like, who's Ryan?
I mean, look, that's fair. I would tune me out too. I get it. Yeah. And also on that, yeah, I saw, because Empire State was pushing some like,
Bullshit,
we're working to be in the league. I'm like, I'm sorry, Empire State. Like, the Empire League can barely get a ballpark full time for one of the teams in their own league. Like, how are you going to find a team that can support a Frontier or a stadium that can support a Frontier League schedule? Get out of here. Sorry,
yeah.
Like that. Like it's one thing. Like I don't have an issue with the Empire League. I don't like they are what they are. I have an issue with just straight up just spinning some BS out of nowhere. I'm like, what? What are we doing here?
It's like, did they forget their purpose? It's like, y'all were here to die. That was the deal. Like, you show up, you get paid to go out and fill a schedule. That's the deal.
Yeah, I mean, and your guys got good opportunity of it, let's be honest. But,
yeah,
like,
they got
that's
some
good.
Pay, yeah.
Yeah. For the situation, I'm glad that something positive could come from it. But, like, what are we... I feel like when they said that the Frontier League was, you're like, what?
Yeah. Like, I saw the statement, too. I was just like, what? What's this? And then it's like,
sorry, what are we doing here?
Yeah, that also, just one final touch on the Jackal thing before we talk about another way that a league is handling having an odd number of teams, which is probably the shittiest way to do it. But, like, I do appreciate Montclair State getting so petty that they're like, we're not building them any sort of renovation. The Jackals can foot the bill. Then as soon as the Jackals piece out, they're like, all right, let's get the blueprints out on how to renovate this ballpark.
Yeah, it does have the vibe of, like, I don't even know. It's like I had something for it, but so we're not even going to go that down rabbit hole for that stupid analogy. But it does have the feel of like, all right, those idiots are gone. Let's talk about the actual party we're planning.
Yeah, it does kind of.
I'm not calling them idiots. I'm just saying like,
yeah,
that was the thought process in my head. Sorry, that there was no way that was going to come out well. So whatever.
It's when you're going ahead and you're making plans in the side group chat that doesn't have the one or two people in it. And just
there you go.
Yeah.
You just nailed it. Yep.
Yeah. Or it was like when the one person throws something insanely idiotic into the group chat and then immediately you start seeing notifications and you just drop it down and be like, okay, is that a group chat one or is that a just to me one?
Right. Yes.
And we've all replied to the wrong one of those before the wrong way.
Oh, bro, I did it in my family group chat. You know what? I owned it. Now, and it honestly started a really good thing of them being like, okay, like, I realized the world didn't end, and now I just say what I think to my family. And the end result has been really good. I just see my family less.
See? I love a happy ending.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and talking about seeing family less, Spire City's going to see a lot less of their Atlantic League family.
Bro, yeah.
Yeah. So, in case people didn't realize, it appears that every independent league got the memo that I was out of office from Thursday through Saturday and decided, you know what? Thursday and Friday, we're going to drop all the news that'd be great on a show. And so...
We actually started a group chat without you and coordinated it.
They probably did. They probably all have it. I'm going to find a way into that group chat. Mark my words. But, any case, on Friday, Spire City announced that they're going to be taking a 1-year hiatus. They'll return in 2025. This is kind of a mutual decision, I think was how it was coined, where the league said, someone here has to sit out a year. We're not paying for a travel team. We just had to keep Gastonia afloat, and the coffers are empty. So who's going to take one for the team? And it kind of seemed like Spire City got voluntold that they're going to sit out a year. If you're a 2023 Ghost Town, you're a free agent. If you stay in the Atlantic League, you get put in a reserve draft. Have no idea what that is, but I guarantee it's going to screw over players. Keys will keep playing, so if you are in Frederick or Spire City or whatever we're doing with that, you still have baseball to watch, and I assume they're going to use the alternate identity at some point. They mentioned in the press release that they were going to do it. In any case, no Ghost Towns for 2024, but apparently Ghost Towns for 2025, which I'm sure they love taking a year off when they have an in-state rival that's 30 miles away that's building a brand new ballpark that's also building a brand. I'm sure they love having that nice year on pause.
Really wrap my head around this. I think you're right. I think they're voluntold. That's for sure. They definitely are not thrilled about the way this went down. When it comes to, Frederick, not Frederick, Hagerstown, because it was the next day, Hagerstown posted something and it had a graphic and it was a promo graphic, which fine. They have to do their thing too. And this is actually going to lead to my theory on how this might have gone. I think, it's tough when there's a map. And if you didn't see it, it's to the northeast, it's 25, 28 miles. They're talking about towns that are there. They're saying your neighborhood ballpark or whatever, your neighborhood team. And it's 25 miles to the northeast, 20 miles to the north. Yep. And all of a sudden it's the only town listed southeast is 11 miles away. And that's because if you go another 15 miles, you hit Frederick. That's how close they are. And immediately they're marketing that they're the local team. So, my theory, one, I would not be surprised if the Atlantic League might have led on Spire City a little bit. I would not be surprised if Spire City maybe got a little bit ahead of themselves as well. I don't have any facts on that. I just, from working around this league enough, I'm that feels like
something they would do.
A possibility. Yeah. That feels familiar. And, I'm trying to kind of pick and choose how I go about this, but, because I can have strong suspicions, but I don't want to put that out there as fact and end up in hot water on something. Yeah. But I may have strong suspicions that Hagerstown said something. Because if you're Hagerstown, you have a game plan to come in this league. You got a rival in Waldorf with Southern Maryland. That is not at all a competing market to you, because that is still a good length between the two of you.
Yep.
There's a body of water between you, if I recall my geography appropriately. So then all of a sudden they're oh, by the way, within 30 minutes of you, within 25-ish miles, you now have another team, and they actually have been in the league already. So if there is somebody who's going to be into Atlantic baseball, they've already been introduced to this team who is now competition to you for this new ballpark that you built and all the money that you invested in this deal that you had that predated this other team being in the league. I don't see Hagerstown being cool with it. Frankly, if Hagerstown is cool with it, I think it's bad business. So, if I was Hagerstown, I would probably try to body Frederick as well. But it is, I think, from a league perspective, bad business. And I think it's a concerning, we always talk about we want more collaboration between the leagues. I think it's a really bad sign for any future of that sort of thing, because it sounds like Lexington is under contract for the first 5 years. So they got 2 years left before they can really go anywhere.
Yeah.
Gastonia is sitting on the same, and the other teams that were rumored have similar situations. So, but what we have gotten through the grapevine is that there are teams that are unhappy and they're willing to leave. And now for this is the third straight off season that the Atlantic League has had an odd number of teams and the Frontier League has had an odd number of teams. And there has been the option or the possibility of switching teams around and making something work, and everyone has even numbers. And it doesn't even have to be a long-term thing, even though that might have other headaches on the business side of switching a team back and forth. But just to solve a temporary issue during expansion, and it hasn't happened once, to the point where the Frontier League would end up going with a travel team for back-to-back years and then starting a team back in Brockton, which is, we'll talk about it. And the Atlantic League is willing to do 2 teams that play in the ballpark of another team and then put another team on hiatus the third year. These leagues are never going to work together, I don't think. This is, the amount of backtracking this is, the amount of it's really disappointing. I think Spire City did a lot of things right. There's a lot of negativity from fans around that area, about them not getting support, because I think they're very familiar with the Frederick Keys brand. But they were So I've seen a few different comments that basically say like, "Oh, nobody goes to those games, and they go when you can't get keys tickets." It's like, yeah, well, spoiler alert, buddy. Like the keys are leaving. Like, if you think this is going to be an Atlantic League team with a draft league team, you're high. Like they're going to ditch that brand immediately because the draft league sucks. Like, and the Atlantic League can actually turn a profit if you know what you're doing, which Chuck Domino does, who's running things partially over there. So, yeah, I think they would be able to basically scoop Frederick's fan base, which they have a good fan base, and do great. Spire City would, and it's just really disappointing. And I think it's really shooting a great potential market in the foot. And yeah, man, yeah, it's frustrating. How many times are we like, yo, the Atlantic League did a great job here. When they went to Frederick, we were like, that is a good move. Like, I think just about everyone was like, this is a great call. And for them to, within a year, just mess that up so bad and fumble that bag is like so frustratingly on brand. I want to be positive this episode, but it's hard to get through this without being like, dude, what are we doing? Because I hate it for Aspire City too. And hell, what's going on with Mark Minikazi now? That's a DM I got to send.
Yeah.
Like, now what? They talk about the play. What's that guy doing? Because that guy, he keeps bouncing around. He was with Charleston in 1 year, and then whenever the genomes for what he thought was going to be a longer term situation wasn't, got at least picked up with Spire City, had to rebuild the roster for the third year in a row. Then my guy now is in this situation. So,
well, at least he's got some job openings available too. That's a
positive. He does. Good transition.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could transition to those two things, but
you should.
I should, but like I got a couple other thoughts in.
All right, fair.
Yeah, that's the problem here. I'm gonna waste a great transition with a couple of things. One,
go ahead and elaborate.
Yeah. First off, if you're curious about the graphic, it got posted on the 25th. I believe this news was a 22nd thing. So it was enough time where they had time to make the graphic. Yeah. So like they made a conscious decision to include particular teams there. And they just show the ones that are all around the general area of Maryland. They show West Virginia and Pennsylvania in there too. And they do include like Martinsburg, West Virginia. They show Chalmersburg, Pennsylvania. But Smithsburg's in there as well as Greencastle as well. And the tagline is professional baseball and family fun in your own backyard. So that is essentially what that is. Link it in the show notes if you want to take a look at that. Now, to the point on the in-state rivalries there, Waldorf to Hagerstown is approximately an hour 40. Main slowdown there is essentially no real way to avoid going through DC. You have to go near it at some point, so you're going to hit DC traffic. That's going to slow you down. And of course, that's doing the math at about 10:20 at night. I have to imagine if you're traveling at, a regular hour, you're going to hit a lot more traffic, and it's probably going to be closer to about 2 to 2.5 hours, as opposed to how close it is going from Frederick to Hagerstown, which is only a short 30-minute drive. So even if you want to tack on an extra 15, 20, okay, fine. It's just under an hour to go between the two there. So it is not necessarily exactly the same market, but it is close enough to where you could justifiably say, hey, it's only an hour's drive. Let's do that. You do it once, you go, that kind of sucked. And then 6 weeks later, you're like, it was kind of fun. Why don't we do that again? And then you go, oh yeah, the drive sucks, but you still do it 2 or 3 times a year. So like it is kind of poaching it. I will say, at least as far as everything goes, they are kind of cutting the legs out from underneath Spire City. I think they're also screwing the guys over too, the players on that team, Again, more Atlantic League jobs that are kind of going out the window. And it also speaks a lot to really poor planning. I also hate the fact that they're trying to spin this as, look, they'll be back in 25 when we expand up to 12. And it's like, I don't really think you're going to be at 12 and 25. I think you're going to be closer to 10 and 25, to be quite honest with you.
Yep.
But, expansion or contraction, however we want to call it, or general migration, I guess is a better way of framing it, is probably the end result there. So, like, that's just, moves like this just kind of indicate to me something about financial health of the league. Because obviously this is not a positive thing for anybody. And even if it is, like, the group made a decision that we think would be best for you to sit this year out, everyone in the group is aware that, like, hey, if there's enough votes, they're going to do that to me too if they get in that position.
Yo, thank you for saying that. That is exactly my thoughts.
Yeah.
Now, I do think it's a slightly different situation because everyone else has like a long multi-year deal that they signed when a bunch of money was exchanged to start things up with the league.
Yeah.
When the team joined, which I don't think Frederick had. I think they always had a 1-year situation with a tentative agreement to negotiate, and this is the end of the negotiations. But I also don't believe that there wasn't talk that was pretty damn optimistic about them having a team next year. And because I don't think they would have done that full rebrand, honestly. I think if they knew they had a hiatus this year, I think they would probably, I don't know. Look, I don't know. I think I would.
No, I agree with it. I would agree
stayed
with
as the Maryland baseball team, whatever the hell they were calling them, the Frederick baseball team.
Yeah, Frederick Baseball Club.
Roll out a new brand in this offseason to build a year of excitement while you're on hiatus, keep a buzz going.
Yeah, because you're cutting the legs out from underneath that brand. How are you supposed to build any sort of a real fan base at brand when you have to go on a year's hiatus? You spend half the year not really being able to sell or move any sort of merchandise because of the branding deal. And now it looks like a Washington Commanders type situation where it started with Redskins. That's like, okay, you have a lot of history behind it. You have a fan base behind it. Obviously there's problems with it. Then you go to football team for like a year and a half as a placeholder. And then you come out with kind of a lame duck rebrand. Now in this case, Ghost Town is actually a good name. The branding kind of has grown on me a lot. The colors weren't great in the beginning, but I do appreciate how unique it is. I appreciate the brand now, but still, you had, 2-3 months to sell merch. Now it's going to be on hiatus. I can't imagine how much it's going to do damage-wise to trying to get repeat sales, group sales, season ticket sale. Even, I gotta think like some sort of like ad deal sales are going to kind of suck off of this. Because it's like, hey, you disappeared for a year. Like, how is that any value to my brand? And you figure the vast majority of companies you're dealing with are also small businesses. They probably don't have that much money allotted to their marketing budget. So are they really going to are they going to want to roll the dice on a brand that disappeared for a year to come back and be like, yeah, sure, we'll go ahead and we'll slap a $75,000 ad in your outfield wall or however much it may be. I imagine 75 probably buys you a lot more than that, but still.
Well, I think the big thing is, at least I think I don't know this. I tried to do this comparison of like looking at the outfield wall and all that, but year to year, I feel like a lot of their sponsors are likely still at this point sponsors who also sponsor the keys and still sponsor the keys. So like at least like the baseball isn't disappearing from that ballpark, so there's still something to sponsor and throw money at if you would like. It would be a whole different situation if there was no team playing that ballpark next year and you have to like retain these sponsors. So you would probably be trying to do a deal for a long-term 2 year, like for the next season, just to keep some income coming because you don't have anything else. And that would be like the way we saw during COVID, where like a lot of season ticket holders just like the team just kept the money and they moved the tickets over for another year, but then they took a hit the next season, not selling all the season tickets because they already purchased like a year and a half prior. So that at least is something they're avoiding. It goes back to, I also don't think the profit margins are that great in the draft league. So that's a killer. Not that they were making a ton of money with Atlantic League baseball, but I do think it was subsidized by the league. Oh man, it's just bad from every angle though.
I mean, you're killing fan interest.
I think there's a way for them to make this work, mainly because I'm confident in that front office. I think they do have a talented front office, and I'm like, I would say of the 10 front offices in the Atlantic League, I'd probably say they're probably top 4, top 3. However, for that reason, I think that's why I'm so disappointed, because like the league needs competent teams and competent people right now, and not to be giving competent teams and competent people the finger. And that's what you just did. And I'm sorry, like if I'm a fan of the Frederick Keys, who's half in, half out on this whole thing, and like maybe I'm kind of interested in the brand, and maybe I saw a Spire City game or two, and I like it, but I like my Keys. They've been here forever, and I'm still deciding on it. And Indy Ball, which I'm not really acquainted with, like I'm like, yo, this is amateur as hell. Like I was at that league that just seduces for a year, and then we're like, okay, now like come back because it can't consistently fill its own league. Like that's another thing. Like you're still fighting for fans, man. It's disappointing.
And if you're in that front office here, I mean, man, like now a year you're not going to be playing baseball. I mean, like I can't imagine you're going to love that. Obviously, you still have some sort of a job, but like it feels like it's harming your career development to not have play on the field and be able to, point to stuff. For some people, it's probably not a big deal, but for others, I gotta imagine it does matter. I mean, I believe the broadcasters and all them have pretty much been told, hey, you can go do whatever you want to do for next year.
I mean, Lexington did themselves no favors when it came to their marketing, but when I was surprised I got there for the second year that they were there, and the town still didn't know what the hell was going on. Like, what's this league? What are we doing here? Like, and then they threw a second team in, and that caused confusion. Like, I think you're going to see some of that too. Like, it's an ongoing battle to explain to people what Indy Ball is. Like, I always have to explain Indy Ball to people. Like, I've gotten better at it because I'm so used to it, but like, you have to explain what Indy Ball is and explain that while it's unaffiliated, it is much better than the baseball that you have on the field right now with your current team. And you have to do that in marketing. And I'll be honest, I'm going through this with my full-time job. Like, we were just working on a campaign with a department that is not marketing. And we had to explain to them, like, at first glance, somebody's going to decide if they're interested in your product in 5 to 6 words. They're not going to read beyond that. If you get a curiosity, it'll push it to 11 words. And then from there, you might be able to expand them to 20. Like, that's how many words you have to make people, be like, yeah, I'll go to that game. Realistically, on a basic ad. It's like, and now you got to explain this. So work that into your 6-word explanation.
Baseball Unleashed. Experience it for yourself.
The last 2 words have to be, oh no. So now you have 4 words.
Damn. Okay.
And Spire City Ghost Hounds is those 4. So I don't know.
Spire City Ghost Hounds. Oh no.
Actually, did we just nail that? Are we amazing at this?
Probably. I mean, hey, Hagerstown, you hiring? I go to Spire City, but everything's a little bit on ice over there for right now. I do know one place that is hiring.
Are you going to say Cleveland?
I was going to say Brockton, Massachusetts.
Well, okay, look, man, you're going to give me that wide open of a question, just expect me to nail it first time. Okay, you're going to say, well, I'll give you the order of things we're talking about. Hey, man, I didn't write it down. I was just like, yeah, sounds good. I'll probably remember. I didn't. So
you did get it right,
keep it in mind on the back end, all right?
I mean, you did get one thing right, which is we did spend 3 minutes before this show going over the order of things.
Yeah, it's because I'm an idiot.
Any case, yeah. So last Thursday, I was on an Amtrak train a week ago for those keeping track of this. And, they announced that they're going to Brockton, Massachusetts. They're going to start playing 2024. That means we're up to 16 full-time teams in the Frontier League. No more Frontier League grays, thank God. Windy City's owner, Brian Kahn, is also going to own the team. So there is familiarity there. It looks like the Brockton Rock, the Frontier League, or the future college league team will remain there. If the Brockton Rock sound familiar, that's because they were previously a professional team, several years back, about a decade or so ago, actually. Played for many years in a mixture of leagues, pretty much whatever the Jackals were in, they were in. Trend kind of continues still, so they'll be sharing, Campanella Stadium. And it looks like there's going to be 80 dates in Brockton, 42 going to the New England, as they're calling it, Frontier League team, and then 32 going to the Brockton Rock, which is a phenomenal name, by the way. So, Brockton is there. I will note that we've known about Brockton for a little bit as the actual team name. I think it was like 2 weeks or so ago I got told Brockton. Yeah. Any thoughts on Brockton?
Other than the fact, it's weird the Brockton Rocks just have straight up the Chicago White Sox throwback logo. So I don't know much about Brockton. I'll lead with that, but from my research, it seems like that fell apart previously because of ownership not being able to kind of keep funding it. I think.
Okay.
I don't know. That seems to be it. Reading tea leaves, reading articles. However. Oh, yeah. So towards the end of the season, it became known the owners and management were $300,000 in debt. So, yeah, that's a good time.
That's a problem. Holy shit,
so that
though.
was
Hold on.
The end of their CAM. What's up?
Important thing here. Did you see the Brockton Rock logo? Or not logo, the mascot.
It's a kangaroo?
Yes, it is a kangaroo.
Love that. All right. I got a few random thoughts I'll throw out while we're going through some really impressive and concerning photos of this kangaroo mascot. From what I hear, it sounds like there's new ownership right over the past few years, and they do seem to be like an ownership group that has several stakes in several teams. So that seems to be a very solid thing, which I think is a great move for teams right now, as we've learned from certain championship representatives in other leagues. I think it is. Oh God. That is haunting.
Kangaroo with a dunkaroo.
What is holding? A dunkaroo? Oh my God.
I love how I'm derailing this by just sending you a picture of this kangaroo.
Jesus. All right.
All right, so back on track. Enough with the kangaroo. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I guess my point being, I do think it's not a flashy addition, but I think it's probably a good move, and it's probably a solid move, and that's good. That's what we need. That's what we need in Indy Ball right now, is solid ownership. Owners that own multiple teams concern me, and that seems to be the Brockton ownership situation, which is, again, can be fine, but it's more than it seems it is often outright. Be run a hell of a lot like a business. Like, this isn't like Diamond Baseball Holdings, luckily, but it seems closer to, what is that, mid whatever, Main Street Baseball. It's kind of what they remind me of, and probably a little less conglomerate-like than that, but it just worries me. I see a lot of the same. Sorry, I'm like processing this on the pod, and that's not how I like to go about things. But
it's more fun that way, though.
There's negatives which are obvious. Like, if it's like it's the same thing as any company that buys up businesses. You know, their touch on the community cannot be as good. Their outlook on things cannot be as good. It's certainly a money-making enterprise at that point, which means they're not. I mean, the Saint of Second Chances documentary, which strong recommend on that. I would say does a great job of showing the big plus of an owner who's just, you got to make some money, but they're in it to have fun and bring something to the community and win some baseball games too. Like, that is ideal. And, hell, I mean, look at the Mets this year. I mean, I'm sure their fans aren't happy they ain't winning, but at least they know they tried for it, and there's a lot of owners who don't. So things like somebody who's just in it, not necessarily to straight profit, but just to own a damn baseball team. That's cool. And that's why it worries me when it's people who seem to own multiple and own like stake in different teams. But
when a team's an investment,
that can also help you out.
Yeah.
Because then sometimes you can afford to do things like if they have multiple teams, then you can, make deals with transportation companies and fireworks companies and the people who manufacture bobbleheads, and you buy in bulk and you give them tons of business during the year, and they cut you a deal, and then you can do better things for that. So there's a flip side to it too, and I'm aware of it, but it always feels icky. But I guess my number one feeling is especially after the year we've had with Gastonia, I am happy that there seems to be at least a solid ownership.
Yeah. So couple things.
Sorry, that was much longer thoughts. So please take the floor.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, I did my best to derail it as much as I could. We had a hopping good time, that's why. More to the point.
I hate it.
But it's here now. Like, couple thoughts I had. Mainly, I am still kind of concerned about the market. I'm concerned at the fact that we're going to do this thing where we have the summer team and the full-time team there. Obviously, Brockton Rock been around 20 or so years now, so they have a pretty decent foothold in the community, would be my guess. And the brand obviously seems to be popular. It hasn't changed in 20 years, so that tells me it's popular enough, even if, like we mentioned earlier, their logo is just a straight ripoff of a throwback Chicago White Sox logo, but even still, it makes me
save some money there. Economical.
Hey, can't blame them. But that does concern me a bit. 80 dates is a lot of dates to fill, especially when we start getting into the days of end of June, July, when a lot of people would rather just kind of go to the beach. They'd rather go do other things than go watch minor league baseball, especially if it's not particularly competitive or there's not a particular draw. That said, they do seem to have good ownership. That's a positive here. I am curious to know where Windy City wound up finishing attendance-wise. That would be a very interesting thing for me to know, because it's the same ownership there, so I imagine it would be kind of the same deal. Okay, we just...
Right, I overlooked that, but you're right. I forgot they were on that list.
1960 is where they finished. That is pretty decent, but that's reported attendance, so you never know what that actually means.
Yeah, right.
So I'd love to know what the true attendance number is, but from what we could tell, looks like there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think, teams ahead of them in at that point, 15 home team league. So that's not terrible. That's upper half. So, coming in at the 8th spot, I ain't that exactly upper half, but right in the middle. I'm cool with it. So, that's good here. But again, I'm just kind of, I don't know about the whole date thing. Plus, when you have multiple teams here, I am a little bit concerned. Is it going to be where one gets a lot of attention, the other one doesn't? Is it going to be where it's kind of like equal parts to each? How's this going to play out? Conspiratorially, I am kind of curious if this is like kind of a play by some of the old ownership group to try and grab some power back from the new Can-Am teams. Because it's clear El Dorso has a lot of sway in there. He has 2 teams as well. So, hey, maybe if we go ahead and we tack on one of the old guard, they grab another team here. Maybe that could try and shift the power balance back. I imagine there's some other ones.
And puts it in the East Division as well.
True.
An extra voice in that side of conversations.
Yep. And also I imagine it probably helps a little bit more travel-wise because you're dealing with the same companies, same groups there. Mm-hmm. Realistically, scheduling-wise, there's different considerations that get made now, too. So it helps you out a bit where you're like, hey, well, why don't we just have New England do it? I'm curious to see what the brand's going to wind up being. And again, I wonder if it's going to be a situation kind of like with Spire City where we just talked about, where it's like you got to build up that whole Ghost Hounds brand, but people know the keys. I wonder if we're going to have that kind of situation there. And if that's the case, how long is that going to last for? And moreover, I do wonder how this plays into further expansion for the league as a whole. 18 isn't really a great number.
Sure.
So I do wonder how that shakes out. Granted, what's it? 3 Atlantic League teams we said we're going to jump over there in Charleston, Lexington, and Staten Island.
I mean, that's the rumor. People swear that's incorrect, and people love to say it's not true, including people who have been the source to tell me that it is true, and then publicly they say it's not. So we'll see.
Yeah, so if that goes according to the plan here, which seems to be at the very least 1 or 2 of them doing it, if that's the case,
I'll say that.
Yeah. But if it does happen, then it's like, okay, well, where's the situation going to land out? How's the geography going to shake out? Where's the other teams going to go? How is this going to look? Right? So I am curious about that. Overall, I think there's still leagues better than having a traveling team. So that's a positive there. There just is a little uncertainty I have given the history of professional baseball in that market and the fact that while, you're not in direct competition with a future college league team, you're still kind of in competition with them because if you're making a decision between going to see The Rock or this new team, The Rock's got an edge on you, and I imagine they're probably a bit cheaper as well. So there's that. So that's just my immediate thoughts on it.
Yeah, and I mean, I do have market concerns for sure. They're not far from Boston at all. What are they? Probably half hour. Yeah, they're half hour from Boston. Now, look, that's a different conversation. I've always said because I think it's for the most part a fallacy to say that MLB teams are your competition if you're an Indy Ball team, because I think people are often going to Indy Ball games because they're more affordable. So it's almost you're in different markets in a way. But it's worth noting too, they're an hour away from Worcester, which the Woo Sox ballpark is like one of the most beautiful ballparks out there right now, and people love it. And so basically, if you go a half hour to the west, you're probably not going to get many of them. If you go a half hour north, you are in the city of Boston, which is less likely for them to leave the city to go to that game. Looking south, I mean, I don't really know what's down there. I got to pull a map up. You got Cape Cod League, obviously, but that's a little bit of a drive off, probably an hour or two. But it is a competition-rich environment, so that is worth worrying about. And hopefully you're thinking about, I mean, it's not an environment they haven't been competing in already. So it's not like a new brand trying to identify, well, it's a new brand, sorry, but like not a new office trying to compete with that, luckily. But I am half very optimistic and half very nervous about that. But
because that's the thing with Brockton, though, as a whole, because like there's a realm where you could see, okay, this makes a lot of sense. If you have Bostonian suburbs, they are essentially what you're trying to draw in here. that are already somewhat familiar with the concept of, professional baseball, and there's already been a team there, and you can kind of build off of that. There's a lot there that can definitely work. It's kind of a give and a take thing.
Maybe. And I mean, the good news, I guess we'll call it good news, is like, while, yeah, there are like a dozen teams on Cape Cod, the northernmost team from there is about a half hour south of you. So they're not really fully in that competition. So, there's positives there too. I guess I just keep listing positives and negatives back and forth and absolutely getting nowhere. So do you have anything else to add on the Brockton front?
No, I don't have anything else for Brockton. I think we've kind of come to the conclusion where it's kind of a coin flip market where if done right, there's potential, but if done poorly, it could very well just kind of wrap itself up. And maybe that's part of the reason you take the swing now is if you, as the Frontier League, feel pretty good about, okay, we're going to have a lot of interest for teams coming in, we could afford to take a 50-50 shot here, because if this doesn't work out, we have other teams that are going to be coming in to kind of fill the gap.
Yeah. No, I think it's well said, and it's going to come down to execution, but I think they at the very least have a fair shot to succeed, which is
they have a fighting chance.
More than a lot of teams. It's more than a team who just rebranded and announced itself and then introduced itself to its fans and then got put on hiatus.
Fair.
I'm on that topic. I'm going to backtrack us just for a minute because we breezed over something, and I think it's worth noting because it does really bother me on the Spire City topic, which is you mentioned the roster of Spire City is not going to be transferred to any club, but they're returning to the Atlantic League. Those players returning to the Atlantic League will go through a reserve rights draft. So like what that means is basically if you want to stay in the Atlantic League, you go into a draft for your rights, and that team that picks you, unless they trade those rights, which actually I don't think you can do. No, you can't do in the Atlantic League. So the team that picks your rights, unless they let them go, you have to go. That's the only team you can go to in the Atlantic League until about a week into the season, when those reserve rights then sort of fall by the wayside. That sucks.
Yeah.
Because these guys, you sign with Spire City, and then Spire City is not back next year because of the league, like because of a choice, right? Not through
Spire City's own doing.
Yeah, and even if it was by their own doing, that's not the players' problem.
Yeah,
it's like so these guys, if they want to play in the top indie league, they have to go to one team instead of being allowed to go to free agency.
Well, you just ruffled some American Association feathers by saying top indie league.
Whatever, American Association. It's not even like they are choosing to, because typically that is designed so you can't just team hop and you have like a Golden State Warriors throwback situation when that was relevant. And whereas you just create a super team because, all the best friends go to the same team. So like they're avoiding that and honestly taking away player leverage, which is a different conversation. But it's not even like that's happening. They're not choosing free agency. The free agency is being thrust upon them. And instead of that, they're like, no, you have to go to this market that you never once signed a contract to play in. Because keep in mind, they signed, whether for lack of options or because they wanted to, signed to play in Frederick, Maryland.
Yeah.
And now they could have a contract to play in a city much further away that is not. A lot of guys play on teams because it's local to them. Yeah. Their family can see them play home games. Like, a lot of owners in that league will have the decency to either not pick them up or release them if they express they don't want to be there, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it's just not good. It's not necessary. There is no reason to distribute those reserve rights among the teams. There's no reason unless there are teams, that have some sort of power within the league and they tend to get MLB guys, but they have a hard time recruiting other ALPB guys at times because people think they have a bad reputation. I can't think of who that would be.
Didn't you already go after this said team a couple weeks ago?
Yes. And also, there's a couple other ones, too. They know who they are.
They know who they are.
There's a couple other teams who don't retain many players year to year. You go look at Baseball Reference. You can figure out who the teams are, which I'll be working. It should be dropped in about 2 weeks. I'm working. Here's a little news drop. I'm working on the, it's been a really ongoing project where I'm trying to do a survey that will be accessible to players on basically player treatment and facilities and just the ins and outs of what it's like to play in different places. So we can start to get kind of a report so people aren't going blind into things and getting their careers ruined because they just didn't know any better than to sign a contract with a team that wasn't going to treat them well or respect them. And that should be on live. I'm just currently hammering out the Spanish version of it. So I don't speak Spanish, so I am relying on some good friends of mine who are very kind and helpful. So
is there a French version?
Oh man!
Because I believe the Quebec players should get a say in this.
Shoot. Damn, you're right. No, you're right.
I just made more work for you. I don't argue. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, it's just, I should have thought that.
See, and the thing is, too, I wouldn't even brought that up besides A, I like to instigate, and B, there's two teams in French.
You mean A?
Jesus Christ. Okay, really, we're doing this today. But that's the first point. The second point being, there is two teams in French Canada with a rumor of a third. So, like...
You're right. Yeah.
So, like, it probably should be
if
there.
I'm honest, I think of the other issues. I think of, you know, okay, there's teams there buying, asking the teams. I'm asking the players. But I forget, like, there's a good bit of French boys out there playing some ball. So, yeah, no, you're right. I'll add that.
And also, if you have any Haitian players, they probably...
It's also difficult because I'll tell you already, I've floated it past people get a read, and a couple teams that know I'm doing this are not thrilled. So that's funny.
Well, I mean, I imagine they're not thrilled about it.
Oh no, accountability.
And the thing is, too, even the teams that don't do anything wrong, they're like, I still would rather not have to get a potentially bad employee grade. I'd rather there not be Indy Ball rate my professor.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the energy.
Yeah. So
then we saw like the NFL players survey that they did.
Fair.
That's sort of where we're heading with this. Hopefully, we'll see.
Yeah. Any case, though, just to piggyback off what you're saying, yeah, like what bothers me, Joe, is just like these guys sign 1-year contracts with no expectation of being picked up the following year, and then you're going to do this crap with like reserve rights. It's like, okay, well then if that's the case, then let them get signed to multi-year deals and have job security. Do more in that regard to help the player out if you're going to do that. But
yep, you're right.
Yeah, so that's just my point on that. I just don't love that as a thing, and either like just let them move about, or even still, if you want to pull like the reserve right thing and say, hey, for 24, you can go wherever you want. You can do whatever you want. You operate as business as usual. But in 25, when Spire City's back, they're going to get first crack at you if they want you back. I wouldn't love it, but I'd be like, okay, fair enough, fine. But even still, I still think they should have a little bit more right. And I got to be honest, if I was a guy in that Atlantic League team, I'd be looking to go more like, hey, Kansas City. Hey, Milwaukee. What's the deal here? And be looking to go that route.
I agree with you there.
But there's also news that may help them out too, that we have, that maybe we should segue right into.
Well, I will just throw in, the other thing is, yeah, if you sign with a team, they are able to opt to keep your rights, like reserve your rights for the Atlantic League, like to basically say you can't sign with anybody else until, again, that date passes. That's the other piece of this. There isn't a team to claim that. So it's weird to allow then the league and other teams to claim that. And while we're talking, I'm trying to pull a contract up. I have some old player contracts here. I'm seeing if there's anything about that in the contract, but I highly doubt it. The contracts in Atlantic League are paper thin.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, if you're a player listening to this, your contract in the Atlantic League is probably easily avoidable. So check that.
And just like that, we could talk about LMB's roster rules.
There you go. Get after it.
So, what we were saying there with, you know, guys like, say, Leo Cabrera, for example, here, who probably doesn't gain much by staying in the Atlantic League and equally doesn't gain anything from going to the American Association to play against competition that's either the same or lesser, he has another option now. LMB has expanded their rosters in a sense. It's still the same 38 player limit. However, the skew is different now. Before, you can only have 7 foreign players, but now you can have up to 20 foreign players.
Shabam.
That's a huge jump, nearly tripling that number of foreign players in there. And the benefit here is they pay a lot more. So there's a lot of guys that before were kind of tweener players that didn't really get a lot of chances. Well, here's your chance, boys. Go make your money.
Yeah, I will say, I think the caveat on that is, I think Mexican American players are apparently no longer counted within like the Mexican players. They're now counted as foreign born. But I'm like, I need to know details on that, because how are you drawing that line?
So
like they have to,
understanding,
is it like the Olympics where it's like it depends on how many grandparents are from that country? Like, so it's a choice.
I think it's citizenship wise. So if a player has Mexican citizenship, they can count as a Mexican player. But if they don't, and it's a dual thing, then I believe it defaults to the American bit. Because that was part of the reason for this, was a matter of they had a problem with a lot of the dual citizenship. So I think this could just very well turn to a case of where were you born, which side of the line? And, okay, you were born in Mexico, you're a Mexican player. You were born in San Diego, you're an American player. Simple as that. Then also apparently people were forging stuff, so.
Jesus.
The people were apparently forging, like, birth certificates and shit like that, passports and the like, to try and pass off as a Mexican national player, so that way they could get on. So they figured if we just do a 50-50 split of the roster, it eliminates the problem. Which I imagine it largely does.
Yeah, I guess so. I follow.
So I'm thinking, honestly, it's for the best. I mean, if you want to have a quality league and a high talent league, let the best players play. I understand to a certain degree you want to protect national born players and you want to foster the game amongst them. I get that. But like at the same point in time here, like, let's be real. The best Mexican players are not playing in LMB. So it's not like even an MPB situation where it's like, okay, we're going to protect the best Japanese players until they're already in the middle of their prime, and then they can go out and get paid by MLB.
Yeah, or even like Lidom, who's bringing in a lot of the top players.
True. Like
back in the offseason. So, which, by the way, did you see that trade?
I did not.
Oh my God. It's so funny because it's like fantasy baseball to an extent where Vlad Jr. got traded for Jose Ramirez in the Dominican League. And it's like, I'm sorry, what?
Well, see, now it's perfect. If Tim Anderson ever goes down there, he's got to be terrified.
Right? Yeah. Oh, man. Anyway, sorry. It's Lidum's so fun, man. I started watching it last year more, and I'm glad I did.
All right. But yeah, any other thoughts on roster rules before we switch into American Association discussion? Because we do have something that kind of connects to this.
I have heard from a couple front office staff that they think that's going to make things a little difficult. They do think that's going to up the competition for them, and teams that, already might have been struggling with the number of guys they're losing to the Mexican League. They're a little stressed.
Like, I understand that, and I do feel for them, and I do want high-quality Indy Ball, don't get me wrong, but I also want these guys to go out and be able to, have a career doing this. So, like... Oh, yeah. Like, for the...
Oh, yeah. Like, I don't feel bad for the teams at all. Like, get the boys paid. That's number one. And then from there... And by the way, if you're in the school of thought that's like, they should be just happy to be playing baseball. Like, I'd do it for free. Yeah, you would do it for free, and no one's trying to pay you to play baseball, are they? So, like... These guys are good enough to make a living and they deserve to do it, just like whatever you do for a living, you deserve to make a living doing it. So that is why I feel that way. And if you cannot pay players to compete in that environment, then you should not own a team, is my thought process there. Sorry, that's before we get ahead of it and people can start filling in the blanks on their own. I do understand it's going to make some things difficult for front offices, but as a rule of thumb, I just do not care.
I agree. It's just I take a different route of thinking, which is like, that's part of the job. Like, you get tossed things and that pops up. Like, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it's difficult. It's like being a fireman and complaining about the flames being hot. It's like, well, that's kind of part of the deal. You signed up willingly to do that. Same thing with being a front office employee. It's like you signed up for that. You are free to leave whenever you want. So from that perspective, I get it. I do have some empathy beyond the sense of like, hey, it did just make your job a lot more difficult. But like, again, figure it out.
It's worth noting, while they can make more money in Mexico, I have run into half a dozen guys, which is one of those things where that means there's definitely more because I don't know that many guys, big picture, who have decided to play in America when they could have played in Mexico, and they even were, and they were like, hey, I just want to get into America to play in America. Like, I got a family. It's a headache to be down in Mexico at this point in my career. Like, I don't want to, that's not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So, like, just being in America is a selling point for your team for a lot of guys. So, yeah, maybe they can pay better, but you can bring other things to the table. So if it's all about the financial thing, maybe think about what else are you doing for the players to make it a desirable location to go to. That's the tip. That's my advice.
Then also, it probably does help you a bit to a certain extent if you have those good connections with MLB scouts and whatnot, and you can promise like, hey, a couple times a week, we're going to have a guy here looking, watching, waiting, and spreading the word. If you have that consistently, it's like, well, hey, if I can get in front of like a Red Sox scout consistently, maybe I'm better off knowing for a fact I'm going to have a scout here like once a homestand, and he's going to be watching me and getting to know me. Like, there's ways you could do that. Plus, if you're already an American player, it's easier to play in America than it is to get a Mexican visa and play down there. Not to mention, if you get cut from a Mexican team, it may be a little bit more difficult to find another Mexican job than it would be to say, like, oh, I didn't make it in Kansas City. Maybe I'll go to Gary.
Right. Yeah, you're right. No nuts. We'll move along from there because there's more I could throw in, but that's a little in the weeds when we have a whole offseason to talk about that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, offseason is going to be fun. It's just going to be this show on repeat. Any case, while we're in tequila state of mind, Champions Baseball League is this weekend. Starts on the 28th, so today while we're recording it, but it will be, several days, and actually will be just about done by the time you're listening to it. It goes to October 1st, mirrored in Mexico on the Yucatan. 2 games a day with a championship game on Sunday. You can watch it on AA Baseball TV. As some are aware, this is champions from the Cuban National Series, the American Association. What's it, LMB as the third, and then I forget the fourth.
Colombia?
Could be, I forget if it was Colombia or Nicaragua. I think Colombia would make more sense.
Shoot. Yeah, I'm trying to be invested. My problem is it's happening during the Atlantic League Championship. So I'm like, oh.
That's part of it. And also, man, like, it's been a long season. Like, from
Mexico,
April
Cuba, Colombia. We got it.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, so that's...
We're so good at this, dude. We're the best.
Oh, really? Gosh. You going to stay up till 9 o'clock to watch the Yucatan Fargo game tomorrow?
I don't know, but I know it didn't go great today.
Yeah, they lost 3-1.
Yeah, womp womp.
They rallied at the end, apparently. I didn't see it. I was at work, so, But in any case,
man.
In case you're wondering, Fargo's the representative from the American Association. They're the ones we're going to focus on because they're the Indy Ball team. This is the champion from the 2022 season, hence Fargo there. There's not a lot of 2022 Red Hawks, though, and they kind of filled out the roster to make it more or less an American Association All-Star team. I think I'm going to agree with Ryan when I say I'm happy it's happening a lot. I really liked seeing this, and this is kind of what I want to see on the North American Indy Ball side of things. And I'd love to see this with like the Pioneer, the American, the Atlantic, and the Frontier. I am a little disappointed the roster isn't entirely Fargo, but I also understand from a practical perspective that was just not going to be the case. So I'm happy I'm getting what I'm getting. It just is a little jarring seeing a guy like Chris Herman, who spent the whole year in Kansas City and won a championship in Kansas City playing for Fargo. That's all.
Yeah, and I said it online too. I think that will probably, hopefully, correct itself over time because, guys, when they sign their deals with Fargo this year, they didn't know that this was even happening. This was mid-season. It was rolled out. So if you sign with Kansas City in the offseason this year, you know that they're scheduled to do this in late September, maybe early October. So hopefully, you have the opportunity to sort of keep your schedule open for that. And that will be the real test is like with that opportunity, are they actually prioritizing this or are they not? In which case, maybe this tournament could be in some trouble, unfortunately.
Yeah, that definitely could be the case. I'm also looking at the staff here. Anthony Barone's on the staff.
Oh.
Yeah, it's Chris Coast, Robbie Lopez, Barone, Joe Dominique, and Ty Hassel.
Good crew.
Yeah, I know, honestly.
That went well.
Yeah. In case people are wondering what the roster looks like, we got Garrett Alexander, Colton Davis, Alex Dubourg, Grant Gavin, Austin Godreau, Tyler Grauer.
Yeah, you're good.
Yep. Tyler Grauer, Charlie Hasty, DJ Snelton, Mitchell Verberg, Christian Young. Catchers are Chris Herman, Roy Morales. I like that a lot. Infielders are Manny Boskin, Dason Crows, Sam Dexter, Leo Pena, Carell Prime, Drew Ward, and Justin Wiley. Outfielders are Evan Alexander, Max Murphy, Alex Oland, Connor Panis, and Dylan Thomas. So some Red Hawks in there, but like I said, as you could tell, a whole assortment of American Association friends. So I get why it's the Champions League too. It's just like, I think I rather would have just seen an all-star team from each of these leagues play against each other. I think that would have been a little bit more fun, even if it doesn't quite go our way.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
I think LMB probably would run away, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's in trouble already. I mean, I was hopeful for this Fargo club, but then they couldn't even get past the Cuban team. That's not a good start. I don't know. I don't know. This could be tough.
Yeah, I think it'll 1-2 finish, and that's a good showing.
I agree wholeheartedly there.
I feel like they could probably beat the Colombian team. I don't have a high chance against Yucatan. Even though
I think that could get ugly.
Do we know what the Yucatan roster looks like?
I'm wondering what time's their game tonight too. I gotta go back to the schedule.
They play 2-9-2.
Oh,
yeah. All right. Yes, they'd be the invert. If you're asking about Yucatan, they play. Yes, they always have the late game. It looks like.
That's what LMB.com got a feature. Cool.
Yeah. Oh god, wait. Oh. I didn't realize they were the Lions. I know the team. I just didn't know the where they're based out of. Oh, they're done.
Yeah, it could not go well.
This actually really could go very badly. Like, I'm looking at the roster.
I'm the third right now. Nothing still.
Okay, that's good.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm just like looking at this lineup though. I'm just like, oh, this isn't looking great.
Oh yeah, it could be a problem.
This could definitely be a problem, boys. Oh, that's not good. I don't think that's the most up-to-date roster. Yeah, no, I'm seeing former major leaguers on here, like a lot of them too.
Yeah, man, this could be Yep. I know I might put my money if I had to.
Oh, Henderson Alvarez is on the team.
Happy for you.
Indy Ball legend.
Mm-hmm.
The Colombian team was Grandma. Okay, I think they got a chance against this one. I'm not seeing too much here.
It's quite the endorsement.
The problem with the Cuban team too is you can never judge it, right? Like, I don't know how good or bad any of these guys are because they never played anywhere but Cuba. I could judge the rest of them because they have free will to leave as they please.
Well, I'll get you in a Yasiel Puig situation.
Yeah, that's never great.
Anyway, I don't think that's what the podcast is supposed to be about. That's on me.
This episode's just going to be called Toxic. Because it's a total waste.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, maybe.
Any case, so that's enough LMB talk. And we do have two other pieces of news we actually have to get to. First of which is from Monday. Cleveland announced they're not going to renew Logan Watkins' contract. Friend of the show, Logan Watkins. They will have a new manager for 2024. Watkins, in his 2.5 seasons in Cleveland, made the playoffs 3 times with an even record of 131 and 131. Talk about even there. I will say, though, his 2 full seasons weren't quite as good, 96 and 104. So, not a bad manager by results. Cleveland, I also imagine, isn't the easiest place to work. Mainly because it's hot as hell. But, yeah, it's bad that the first thought I had was Pete doesn't have a new contract and he lives in Texas.
Yeah, and Tri-City put out that story that there's an article about them saying, like, they intend to bring him back. But there's no guarantee about anything in there. I don't know. And I mean, from what I'm hearing, I heard from the rumor mill that might be, Tri-City might be trying to shake something up. The fact that it's even here's the thing, like, managers all across Indy Ball are working on year-to-year contracts.
Yeah,
those do not all get their own articles saying, like, oh, we're working on it. It gets done, and most of the time it's not even an announcement about it.
Yeah,
it's like, of course he's back. Yeah, whatever. Like, it's interesting that article even had to happen. So yeah, something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that, and obviously there's exceptions that do get multi-year contracts. I think Joe Calfapietra immediately, I think he has a 3-year contract. Michael Schlatt, he signed, I believe, a 5-year deal a couple years back, so he still has 3 years on that. But those are outliers normally. Like, you'll have some guys that get that privilege, but most of them don't get it. So, and also, I mean, in those cases too, ALPB had just been like, what, New Jersey and then immediately to Kansas City. So he wants to be there. He's a good manager. So there's a fit there. And in the case of Missoula, they're a really good team with Michael Schlatt run the show. He's stability. He's a good manager. And I can't imagine Missoula, Missouri. Or fuck, I just called it Missouri, didn't I?
Oh boy.
That's bad. Yeah, Missoula, Montana is that much of a metropolitan destination that's going to draw in a lot of people. Like, so when you find a guy that's down to be there, likes being there, and does a good job there, you just kind of go, yeah, you want to be here for the next 5 years? Cool. Why don't you sign this contract? And in 5 years, we'll give you another one exactly like this.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't necessarily think that there's anybody, any of the people we've recently talked about that kind of fill that description out. So, yeah. I don't know what to make of the Cleveland thing. I'm trying to think of, I'm going to have to do some sort of like recurring like coaching carousel graphic once the offseason officially starts, once the Atlantic League series is over. So, because there's a lot of moving parts right now in Indy Ball.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to start, there's a lot of landing spots. Like, I mean, I know that Jersey seems to be looking to re-sign PJ, but PJ Phillips is kind of like, I'm going to look around elsewhere. So that's another spot now. That is, there's a lot. I feel like maybe it feels like more because I'm more sort of in on leagues that aren't just the Atlantic League, but
yeah,
it does feel like a lot of things this year.
Yeah, like one of the things that I know,
there's also a lot of people starting on the hot seat next year too. I think that's part of what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I wonder what Lamar Rogers' situation is too, because like you gotta get paid more to go to Gary, but like because it's Gary, but like he's just not really hacking it over there. But like
I strongly suspect that will be an opening.
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing official, but I mean, I think he might be paid more than almost any friend
because he's in Gary,
American
dude.
Association manager. Yeah, like you do have to pay to get somebody there. Like, and that's a new. I mean, remember that owner did not sign him.
Yeah.
So
true.
It's a new owner. They're paying him a good bit to pay out that contract. I just could see. I could see that being.
It's just such a tough job, though. I mean, like,
yeah,
getting
I'm
players
to figure out the right way to say
to
I'll get in trouble.
I'll just say it's a tough market. It's like nobody thinks Gary, Indiana. What a lovely destination. It's a very rough neighborhood.
Yeah, we've talked about before the pros and cons on it. Like, we're not going to dunk on it, but it is a tough market. Like, every market has its challenges. That's one of the challenges. So I would say that when I last had somebody try to give me a sales pitch on Gary, the sales pitch on that team was that it's close to the exit or the on-ramp and off-ramp. I was like, that's not a sales pitch, but okay. Yeah. So, like, I don't know. Maybe it's sales. Maybe that is a positive, and also maybe they could work on their sales pitch. But
yeah,
it is like definitely. God, there's so many interesting markets that are available. Like, everything has. So, okay, the quick one is like, there's going to be certain markets that are like really in demand because so many of them come with a little like, good job. But like Cleveland is a tough market. It's hard to get people in there. Gary's got all that baggage that comes with Gary. I still expect Windy City to become an opening. I think that's actually a pretty good job. I think it's worth seeing what happens if Butch Hobson feels like coming back to Chicago because he's had health issues. Yeah. But then you look at New Jersey, if that ends up being an opening, that has huge question marks all around that. I'd be interested to see who ends up having to sell for that job if there is an opening. Or what they might have to pay PJ to come back. There's a lot of interesting ones, and it really puts high pressure on those jobs that, it's rare for a managerial opening to happen on a team that has its act together. Yeah. Because that means they have it together and they're still not successful and they want to be successful. Like, most of the time it's, things are falling apart. The manager's tired of being there, so he leaves, or, there's like bad relationships or whatever. And it's complicated from the jump. It's rare that you get one that, they have it together. That's why I think we're looking at Tri-City and talking about,
yeah,
that's not a done deal yet. That is, I don't know if I'm a manager, I want to see, it's tough to wait because you don't want to get stuck, somewhere non-ideal. We were just talking like moments ago.
That'll be left without a dance partner.
But like, damn, it's hard to not be interested in what's going on there.
One dude I do wonder about, and this is going to be total speculation, I don't have anything on it, but I do wonder if a guy like Brett Jody's kind of done in Lincoln, if he wants to move on from there, if there's an opening out east, if he'd be interested in it. I wonder about that, because Lincoln really hasn't been killing the game over in the American Association. If you remember, he was kind of a last-second option that kind of appeared after they lost the manager. So, you know, like he chose to be there, and he's been there for 2 years now, so we could have left after year 1, but I wonder if, like, say, Tri-City opens up, if you're not like, hey, I can go back to an area I know I'm comfortable in. You know, it's kind of appealing to be more, like, out east if you're in that situation. I wonder about that, because I feel like he'd do better, too, out east. Like, the Somerset teams were never phenomenal. I'm not sure they won a championship under him or not. They may have. But certainly he had more success in the Atlantic League, and I'm not saying he goes right back to that league, but I am saying that, like, maybe you do a little bit better if you're maybe not New Jersey, but maybe like Tri-City or Brockton, you know? Like, yeah, it's a step down, but if the pay's not that far off, you know, I think it's something to at least look at.
Well, he did win in 2015, by the way, with Somerset.
That's the one I wasn't sure about. If he was still.
What about Brockton?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Brockton?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I mean, like that, it just seems like if he's an East Coast guy, if you have a chance to be back on the East Coast, you jump at the chance to get there. Like, obviously, there's a lot of other considerations to factor in, but like, hey, something else. And 15 was the year I wasn't sure about. I wasn't sure if he was still if he was the manager at that point, or if he wasn't quite at the helm yet. I thought he was, but I didn't want to say, oh, well, he did win the one, and then be like, well, no, he didn't. So
took over before 2013.
Okay, so he did have to.
Man, he had a longer run in Somerset than I even remembered.
Yeah, no, he was. I think they only had like 2 managers up to that point.
Yeah, Sparky Lau, right?
Yep.
No one in between.
Yep. So that's why I was like, when they went affiliate, I was like, oh, you just did a lot of people dirty. That's why I kind of hold that grudge. Like, you screwed over like 3 or 4 guys really badly, and that ain't right. I'm not gonna say don't make a move because of 3 or 4 people, but like, I really hope they were clued into that decision before it got made, because otherwise that's a dirtbag move.
I don't even have detail on that one.
Yeah, I'd love to know how that went down there, because like, my only thought on it is like, look, especially in the case of Brett, it's like, he was playing for you before he started managing for you. He was basically a Patriot through and through. I'm not saying don't make the move because of him, but I feel like the amount he's given to your organization and the loyalty there earned him at least like a, hey, as a heads up, you may want to start looking for another job. We're pretty sure we're going to go the affiliate route if we can. Like, I think he's earned that.
Yeah, let me see.
Like, I get that's not how it always works. I might have
some insight here.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. He was a very late addition with Lincoln, because that first year, if I'm correct, he didn't even really have his own coaching staff, because he was signing like April to manage there. So
that's what I'm saying.
What else we got here? We got Sioux City, right?
Oh yeah, like, I guess we could talk about Sioux City now as we transition off.
Sorry, I didn't want to push along, but we are talking. We sort of skimmed right into the American Association talk. So I'm kind of like, well, shoot, we're right there. Yeah.
So speaking of teams that were on the verge of being homeless, or going on hiatus, or being added, Sioux City's another one. We have an update on that. Proposals are all in. There's only 2 of them, and the Parks and Rec Commission here have said we're going to support the Sioux City proposal, basically boiling down to, we know what they're about, so we're going to back them. We're familiar with them. Now, of course, what the Parks and Rec Committee says doesn't really mean anything, because it's the city council that makes the final decision.
I learned that from the show.
Exactly. See, someone get Nick Offerman in here. I need a decision made. But
oh my God.
Anywho, 2 proposals. One's from Sioux City. The other one's from the Northwoods League. Here's how they break down. The Explorers proposal, $100,000 a year annually in rent. It's a 12-year contract, 15 days for non-tenant use, aka they can rent the ballpark out to somebody else for 15 days a year. Presumably that's for like food trucks, That's for concerts. That's for festivals, trade shows, shit like that. There's also going to be a promise of continued investment into the ballpark. The Northwoods League, their contract will be $25,000 annually with a 3% increase. I don't know if that's a 3% annual increase or if that's just 3% from the time the contract starts to the time the contract ends. It would be a 10-year contract with $500,000 in capital improvements made. Was never specified if the Northwoods League team would be giving that money or if it would be the city giving the money. I would imagine it implies it'd be the team. Okay, because otherwise I can't imagine they're going to be dictating terms when they want to use your thing. That doesn't really work that way. And there'll be only 10 non-tenant use days. So only 10 days for like shows, concerts, trade shows, things like that. So those are the two proposals.
I'm sorry, this is off topic, but I'm not really. It's just that it's very odd that that's where they would draw the line on that proposal. Yeah. Like having less tenant usage. Why? You have a shorter baseball schedule. What else are you doing, dude? Like, you can't afford to spend as much, like, sweeten the deal. I mean, obviously I must be missing something, but it just seems so bizarre.
My theory on that is just because, keep in mind, if the city owns the facility, the city could just rent it out to those groups that want to do that thing, and they wouldn't need this primary tenant as a middleman. So let's say Sioux City wants a music festival there. Why do you need the Explorers or this Northwoods League to run it for you? You could just go and do it yourself and go to juice the pot elsewhere. Like, would it be
interesting?
Yeah, like, especially if, let's say, you just hire a specialist to plan that, all right, and you pay them $15,000 to plan this one specific event. Is it cheaper to just spend the $15,000 a year for the dude to plan it, or to go and knock off however much off of a lease deal that you're going to be bringing in? You know, it's just a matter of the city could do it. It's just like, hey, you could do it instead. Because keep in mind, the team's going to take a cut of that.
Yeah, man. Okay, that might piece that together for me then, because I was confused. But that is not even the main point. The main point is just a good thing. That seems that Sioux City has the jump here. Hopefully the ballpark can be maintained well if this continues to go through. I'm still hesitant. There were some very unhappy comments and DMs from Sioux City people, but about me being like, yo, like, they got to figure that out, and the American Association needs to pay attention to this. Yeah. They're like, oh, look at the proposals. It's like, obviously it's not even close. I'm like, yo, it's a few $100,000. If Sioux City has reacted, it's not a deal breaker if they don't like you. Sorry, that sounds harsh, but it's what it is. Like, I still can't get past the way people were talking at the end of that season. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, the vibes were off. They were it was very a sense of finality with it, where it's just like, goodbye forever, that kind of vibe. And we can't forget, it was less than 2 years ago, they were fighting over seats. They were fighting over seating arrangements when they draw, like, what, attendance-wise? This past year, they drew just under 1,200 a game. Now, granted, there was only 3 less than Cleburne did, but Cleburne has the uphill battle of being 100 degrees for most of the summer. So, like, I'm just saying, like, they weren't really killing the game in any real discernible regard. You want to go to 2022, I imagine it's pretty much the same story. Yeah, same story. They did better this past year. They got about an extra 90 or so people into the ballpark every day, but still 1,100 a game. Go back to 21. Like, okay, maybe we're dealing with a residual pandemic, but I don't believe Iowa was really one of the, like, hardcore lock it down kind of states.
Yeah, they didn't care.
Yeah, so even still, okay, they still had just about 1,100. That's what they're drawing a game. So it's not like it's this giant rush to the gates here that you're getting. So, like, don't really sell me on that kind of deal where it's like, oh, well, you know, there's such fan support or whatever it may be. It's like, no, there's not. No, there's not. It's 1,100 game. You're bottom of your league. Don't sell me on that.
If there's bigger fan support, then this wouldn't be an issue.
Exactly. So, like, if
because either they make their money or there be politicians worried about being seen as losing the team, even if the team is a losing enterprise.
Exactly. And it's on one of those levels where it actually makes a difference. You're on a municipal level where, yeah, a couple hundred people that are pissed about this could swing an election one way or the other. And it's a bad look, too, where it's like, we're losing a family-friendly activity. That's going to hurt my value. What are we doing?
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, to the real point of it, which is what we were kind of talking about, is that the way people were talking when this thing was over, like the goodbye post wasn't the typical like till next season thing. Was like talking like this is the last time we're leaving this ballpark type of thing. And it's like, whoa, like, and then to get the amount of like attitude, like it's so ridiculous that this would happen from certain people, including people that are around that front office. I was kind of like, I mean, either they know something we don't, or there are some lies being told either to them or by them. So it'll be interesting to see if this, goes through smoothly. Maybe the city thought they had something they didn't. That's a live possibility as well.
Yeah. See, honestly, that could be part of it. It also could be part of maybe the way we read it was a bit off because it was a bad loss. But even still, like, I agree. The vibe on that was very much like the mood around a funeral. And it's like, look, if you have information that's different, feel free to share it. If not, then don't start coming in and saying, you don't know what you're talking about, you're way off on it, without telling me why I'm off. If you're just going to say I'm wrong because it just won't happen, well, that doesn't mean anything. Like, there's so many other teams that are like, you're totally wrong on it, it won't happen, and then the thing happened, right? Like, how many teams really got saved at the last minute? I think we can count on our hands how many times that's happened.
Oh, yeah, barely ever.
Yeah, like the most recent and prominent example I could think of really is like Kansas City.
Right, yeah, and that, yeah, and I don't know if there's the same hunger around the Sioux City, because I also think, well, I don't really know what Kansas City's ballpark was like before. But I mean, Sioux City
it was also like a lot of just the ownership wasn't great, and then Brandmeier came in and kind of like, okay, we're paying off the debts, we're doing the Negro League thing, and then we're going to go from there.
Yeah, and Sioux City appears to have a ballpark that needs work. I will be the first. I have not set foot in that ballpark yet, and I am hoping to next year. But
going to go to Evansville?
Field trip, I don't know, dude. I'm just going to keep wandering out until I get lost in the corn, baby.
Go north. Go to Canada.
Oh, legally, I think I'm in a gray area of Canada, so we'll see about all that. But what I do know is that it can be a real hindrance as a new owner, or to finding a new owner for a team, or for finding a new person to take on, or to put a team in a ballpark, if that ballpark needs a bunch of work. So it is just more expensive than you think, and it gets more expensive every day with construction. So just be aware. I mean, there's rumors being whispered about that Lexington might be back on the market again to the right person. So I don't know. That's not actively being shopped, but I think there's they'd be open to offers is what the vibe I'm getting. And I think a lot of that is just because that ballpark costs so much to get up to any sort of standard, and it's still not there. So that is how big a deal the ballpark can be. And if Sioux City is fighting that battle right now, the city and the team, that will remain a ticking time bomb until the investment is there to actually do what they need to do.
I would really like to know, too, what it costs to be profitable over in Sioux City. Because I got to imagine the expenses are a bit lower just from geographic region. But I also imagine you're not able to charge nearly as much. And, if you're averaging even $1,200 a game, how many people do you have to come in just to cover the rent?
Yeah.
And that's across 50 days.
Ballpark was big. It was like too big.
Yeah, Lexington's
famously far too big.
Yeah.
But Lexington's ballpark cost about $25,000 to $30,000 a night to run. Just have it open for a game. Yeah. So I'd say maybe half that for a reasonable ballpark.
Okay, so call $12.50.
So we're looking at $13. So say it's $11 on the average seat sale in Sioux City. Looking at their prices, which I'm actually halfway through a graphic on that. That's why I was able to quickly pull that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to have to check.
I'm halfway through a whole comparison on everyone's ticket prices. Math. That's what. Jesus, Ryan, don't say something stupid. Just do the math on the calculator. That's at $1,300 to keep the lights on, like to keep the ballpark to break even. So any night you're under $1,300. Now that's just using ticket sales. So I mean, to be fair, there's also merch sales and all that stuff. I don't know what that does not include front office staff typically in that math. So I mean, that does not include players.
Sure.
So, oh no, maybe that one did. Maybe it did include players. But point is, you're going to have to sell probably at least 1,000 a game just to break even. That's probably going to be more than that. And I don't know what they're doing on merch sales too. But also, if it's a tight economy in a rural community or an industrial community, you can bet there's a little less pocket change around, then you'll start to see that churn up. You know, if you can keep your ticket sales consistent, it'll be hard on the food and the extra thing that's like merch. So you could see it there too.
Yeah,
I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many places expensive to go to. I don't know what their beast looks like recently, and I guess we have a bit of an idea now. But yeah, I won't. But let's just say probably about 1,200-ish tickets. Anytime under that, they're probably taking a loss.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're averaging just under that number, you're averaging a loss.
Yeah, probably.
So,
and that's assuming that is a truthful number, so it's probably a little under that too.
I'm concerned about that, and I'm also just concerned, like I said, relationship they've had with the city before. There's a lot pointing me that still is concerned about this. So I guess to wrap it back to the point, which is to say, people that think that this is completely off the table, I find it hard to believe that's completely off the table. It just, there's a lot of information pointing to the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, if you think it's completely off the table, like to quote the American poet of the Backstreet Boys, tell me why. Like, I need to see some reasoning.
Something else.
I mean, it literally. Okay, hard truth.
Yeah.
I'll say, except for maybe Tania, every Indy Ball team is vulnerable.
Oh yeah, like that's the thing that you're just so you're beholden to the market is really the case where.
Yeah.
If it's a downturn, it's like you're one of the first things getting cut. Like that's just the reality of it. Yep. So unless you
establish your value when the economy is good, that's what I'm preaching constantly. Establish your value.
Or you have to become an institution.
Establish value in good times so you can survive the bad times. You have to become an institution.
Yeah. Like I say at Quebec or something, that's kind of transcended more than just being a ball club. It's an event.
Yeah. I think it's fair.
They're one of the 10 that are safe. But
what else we got on the docket here?
All right, yeah. News-wise, that does it for news. But we have a playoff update to do. So let's get to the playoff update. We have a league that's just wrapped up and another league that's about to wrap up. So this is going to be our second to last playoff update because we'll have the Atlantic League done this time next week. So I guess that will kind of sort of be our... I guess, does this make this the final show of the season?
Yeah, I believe so.
Damn. And to think, we spent nearly 2 hours talking about news and off-the-wall shit.
We suck. Well, at least we're consistent.
Ending the season as we spent it. Beautiful. Let's talk about how Kansas City kicks the crap out of Chicago.
Yeah, that was so bad that I got lit up on socials a little bit because I literally forgot that they had won a game. Like Chicago won a game. Like it just felt like a sweep, man.
I knew you did too, and I was like, I could text him about it, but I was like, he just did a whole thread. He's not going to redo the thread getting rid of that. I'm just going to get in on this and be like, it wasn't a sweep. It was close to a sweep. They lost 3 straight, Chicago did, but it wasn't quite a sweep. So they did win the 16-inning game that we mentioned last week. And then it was nearly done. And in fact, as I was editing 237, that's when Chicago won. And I think I made a remark on that show where I'm like, yeah, watch. I'm going to be halfway through editing this thing and Chicago's going to lose. And that's exactly what happened. I will say, it was close, and it also wasn't close, if that makes sense. Like, Kansas City, you could tell was the better team, but there were close games in it. Obviously, you play a 16-inning game. That's a close game. I mean, that just comes down to one side got a good break, and the other side didn't. That's the end result there. Game 4, for example, that was a walk-off by O'Grady, and I felt so bad for, I'm pretty sure it was Altman that dove for that ball, and it was just out of his reach. And if you notice, right before that at bat, he shifts over one step because I guess he was trying to play over a little bit. And if he doesn't shift over that little bit, when he makes the dive, he's able to get that ball. Now, I don't think he's able to pop back up and get the out, that would have either, at that point, I think that would have ended the inning, or at the very least given him a shot at the plate. But, like, he still would have had the ball, and that makes you feel a little bit better if you're able to at least get it. But it was just outside of his reach by that step margin. I felt so bad for that dude, because you could tell when he was just laying there on the ground, he was like, why'd I shift over?
Yeah.
He knew, and he felt that one. And it's like, dude, you shouldn't feel anything here. Like, you're a large part of why they're here right now. Like, without you here, they're not making the playoffs. Let's be real for a minute. Like, you're an MVP candidate. Like, that doesn't make that feel better. But, like, this ain't on you, bud. So I felt bad for him. But, yeah, Kansas City just kind of did what they always did, which was the first time through, you're going to get them. The second time through, they're going to start to get to you. But if you can still break even, you still got a chance. And then the third time through is where they light you up. Because now it's like, oh, we know what we're dealing with here. And
they got too many professional hitters in that lineup.
Exactly. And it's just too much business as usual with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it stems top to bottom. And that's the problem, is they were a deep team too. Where it's like, you don't get a break here. Where's the break here? Either you have Indy Ball slugger or former major leaguer. And it's like, well, it doesn't matter. There's a reason why they've now won 3 titles in 5 years.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah. Which, do you think 3 and 5 qualifies as a dynasty?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, that's what I was thinking too. I was like,
especially because they've been competitive in years in between.
That's the thing. And like, the only year they weren't was the hiatus year for COVID.
Yeah.
So like that.
Yeah, and like, I feel like that's 3 out of 5, man. That's hell of a run. I mean, there's great teams that don't get that done because it's just damn hard.
Yeah.
Like,
and the only reason it's not like 3 in a row is because they just ran into like a really good Fargo team last year. Like,
I mean,
really
I would say
team too.
There's people who would call like the early 2010s Giants a dynasty because they won 3 out of 5.
Yeah,
and like they were like just okay in 2011, and they were like outright bad in 2013.
Even like, your bullshit.
Yeah, so.
Like, I feel like Kansas City does qualify for this, though. I feel like they are definitely in that grouping, and like
here's the thing, and I think it's a fair caveat. I've never heard anyone else bring this up, and which makes me, I don't know, I'm surprised I'm so confident.
Okay,
I'm trying to think about. I'm backtracking in my head the other American Association champs, going back a few here.
You do know there's a page on the American Association website.
Yeah, I'm heading right there. Okay. I know it. It's all right.
God bless them for making it easy. That's why I like these guys.
I hate to be that guy. It's not 3 out of 5.
They didn't include it yet.
That's 2 out of 3.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We're not counting 2020. Yep, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I don't see. That's the thing. Like, I'm not taking that away. The Milkmen won that fair and square. They played by the rules that were there. So I don't like this half championship crap. They won it. That was the rules. That said,
Mickey Mouse.
It was 6 teams. It was 6 teams.
Mouse, what it was.
And like, it's a different setup here. Which again, what did we say 2 weeks ago, Chicago? What did we say 2 weeks ago when you were talking your shit after beating Milwaukee?
Mm-hmm.
Don't talk your shit. You still have more to win. And even their 2020 weird ass season ring is still a ring, and it's still more than you have. So again.
Yeah.
And technically now Milwaukee's won more final games than you have, even if we don't count the 2020 season. Just want to point that out there.
Oops.
For that
here's what I'll say.
Game.
It's definitely a dynasty. Because if you go back, for 2023, it's a championship. 2022, it's not a championship, but it's the best record in the league, and they just didn't get done in the playoffs. 2021,
championship.
It's a championship.
And 2020,
they did not compete, so 2020 is not in the conversation.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
2019, they win the division again. Did not have the best record, but still made it into the playoffs with a division title, regular season title, whatever. And then 2018, again, championship.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
That's a dynasty, friend.
Yeah.
I never got to the point, and it's not relevant here in this situation, but I will say, if we're qualifying it as 3 out of 5 years you win a championship, while also
being competitive.
Being competitive in the meantime.
Yeah.
I think it's also like you can't also have another team doing the same thing. Like, I know 2 teams can't win 3 out of 5, but like if another team has won 2 of those, and like
here's the problem I have with that though is, like, I don't think another team being really good at the same time diminishes your accomplishment.
I think, no, it's not an accomplishment, but I think if we're going to slap the dynasty on it, it is like singular.
I mean,
you are the dynasty of that realm. That is yours until someone comes and takes it.
See,
in my opinion, you can't have 2. You can have another one in a different league. That's fine. The great dynasties do not share with others.
I would only say that it can't be in the same division. I'm fine with it in another division because divisions can be awfully weak. Look at what the Frontier League's been doing out in the West. Like, you can go ahead and play substandard ball out West, make the final, and then it's like, okay, you're playing an East team that just had to, like, fight and claw for the last 3 months and barely got by like, the skin of their teeth. So, like, that juices the numbers on it a little bit too. So, like, I think you can have 2 in the same league. I think they can coexist. I think only one can be a dynasty, and the better of the 2, yeah. And I would go as far to say that definition of competitive and non-championship years has to either be a division title or a record significantly above 500, probably like 7 to 10 games above 500 to be significant enough for me. In a 100-game season, I think that's enough. So I would go that far, and I would say that you have to qualify for the playoffs and win a round for me to really kind of consider that, especially at this point where we're playing like multiple rounds here. If it was just like qualifying is the championship round, then, different situation there. But yeah.
Maybe I have a hard time setting like a standard on having to win a round, because like you've shown you can get done the playoffs if you won those multiple championships. Like every once in a while something stupid just happens. Like playoff baseball is stupid. I know people hate to hear that, but like playoff baseball is very stupid. Like, it's great. I love it. I just literally had a whole thread on Twitter about how much I love playoff baseball, but it is not the way to determine what is a better team.
Okay, I got a question for you then. Just throwing it out here.
Sure.
Would the 2010 or 2010 Winnipeg Gold Eyes meet the definition of a dynasty? Because they won back-to-back in 17-16, and they won one in 12.
I mean, I'm tempted to say no, but I'll see.
3 and 6.
3 and 6 is distinctly not 3 and 5.
Yeah, but it's also back-to-back years too. So does that just mean you had
school? What are we doing?
I'm just saying, like, look, the kind of
Winnipeg,
dominance you have to have year to year, and to port over a roster like that in a league with roster restrictions, that says a lot. And it's a Winnipeg too, so recruiting to Canada is also very different. And you have a lot of really crappy road trips there too, because keep in mind, this is when you still had a couple more Texas teams.
Yeah, I mean, they had a division title in those middle 3 years, but they also had a below 500 season in those middle 3 years.
Yeah, in any case, that wraps up Chicago talk. Yeah, so that was a dog season. Good season for them overall. They overachieved a little bit, I think, in my mind. Kansas City did exactly what they set out to do, so good for them.
They overachieved, but they were a good team. Let's not take away from it. Like,
fair.
People are like, oh, yeah, we're not saying they're bad. We're saying like they probably overachieved a bit.
Yeah, it's just like I wasn't expecting to be that good. I expected Josh Altman to be that good. I expected a couple other guys to be that good, but I saw a lot of guys like Luke Mangiari that I was like, I don't know how he's going to transfer over. I'm kind of concerned about that. And he transferred over well. And it was like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, the things that needed to happen for them to be successful happened. Good for them.
Yeah.
So, any case, that brings us to Atlantic League talk. Lancaster, Long Island's up first, and then we're going to get Estonia, High Point, and then we're going to get to our finals matchup. Did you really see Lancaster sweeping Long Island going into that series?
Oh, no. No.
After
Absolutely
game
not.
2, did you see that as a very distinct possibility?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They were flat, man.
Just not a good
Island
team?
did not look checked in.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's not a good team. Just it didn't look hungry, you know?
Looked like a team
That's
that
all.
took the first half seriously and then took the second half off and couldn't get back into gear.
Like they didn't get signed and they said, all right. Kind of like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, looking at the win probabilities, Lancaster did roll into a 16% chance to sweep this thing, but still, man.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. I mean,
Which is also, hold on,
yeah.
16, well, very near the same percentage like Gastonia had to win their series in 5 games. So how about that?
That's something. But
Things that make you go, huh.
yeah. But yeah, so like we talked a lot about that series last week when you recorded from game 2. So like I don't really know how much more we have to say about it. Long Island didn't look good, and it showed on the scoreboard. And then like game 3, Stormers took an early lead, didn't look back, and that's kind of the case here. Like
And mistakes cost them, which continues to be the theme.
oh yeah, like I keep getting a lot of mileage out of the poor Fundy skiff. Like I shouldn't be getting this much mileage in the postseason, guys. Like it's bad. It's getting really bad. I'm very concerning.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm not sure what to make of it. It's something to definitely look at, and I think that I've tried to talk to people about it, like people in the leagues and in dugouts, and most people will like talk a little bit about it, but won't go on the record about it because I think everyone feels like right about now it feels very pointed at somebody else, and that's not the point. Like it's just generally the fundamentals have been down, but definitely it's noticed. It's been noticed, and it's not something that necessarily struck me. Maybe because the mistakes have been lower impact, and now they're magnified in the playoffs. But it is, and it is both like physical errors and mental mistakes. Like it happened the other night in the Gastonia game. We had someone, I think it was Eric De La Cruz, I guess. Yeah, he doubles. Lead off double. No, 1 out double, and he tries to stretch it and gets thrown out third. And the 3-4 hitters are coming up in a tie game in the late, like 8th inning.
Yeah,
maybe 7th inning. I don't know, but it was like, dude, like you got to be aware. You have to know that lineup. That's at least the 5th day in a row they've run that, or 4th day in a row they had run that lineup out there. I think 6th actually day in a row. So like who's behind you. Like 1 out, you stay on second. You're in scoring position. You're fast. You're gonna get around if that ball gets in the outfield. Odds are like it bizarre to try to stretch to third. Like I know they got, of course a sac fly brings you in, but like I don't know. Like you got to look at. Essentially, it was one of those things where it was like a 3% better chance to like, have a positive result if you get to third. Yeah, and the boys have been hitting. Like they just
your identity is hitting.
It was game 1 against Lancaster, and they had just hung like 10, 11 on High Point the day before. Like, show some faith, man. I don't know. That little things like that bother me. Like you can't be running out of runs. It's just crazy to me. But yeah, Long Island fundamentals were really poor throughout the series. That cost them. And Lancaster is a good enough team where you just can't do that. So props to them. I'm not trying to say like Long Island gave it away. I'm saying that Lancaster put pressure on them. Is a fast team, 200 plus steals, and it puts pressure on the defense, and they made them pay.
High Point Gastonia. I'm not sure if we talked about game 2 last week or not. It was being played. Boy. It was a 5-2 final.
Yeah.
Yep.
Didn't talk about it much, man. Hell of a series, huh?
Yeah.
Lived up. Definitely lived up.
A lot of counter punches.
I thought High Point was dead going into game 5. Or Gastonia was dead. It was third in a year, third decisive game between them, and they'd already lost the first 2, and they had a chance to finish out in 4 and didn't. I was like, oh, they're in trouble. But no, they came back. They came back swinging at it, and they let it go. Yeah,
game 2, 5-2. Game 3, Gastonia took it to push them to the brink, 11-8. Back and forth the whole way on that one. High Point in game 4 wins that walk off in the 9th, 3-2. So yeah, momentum's shifting one way or the other, and Gastonia broke it open in the 8th, but like they felt good for most of the game though. And really what was the case was Mort and Kynes just like went to work and they did a damn good job.
And that was huge because if you weren't keeping track of it, the series had a rain out on game 4 on Saturday. So it's supposed to be Saturday, Sunday, games 4 and 5 with
Monday off day.
Monday travel day, Tuesday up in Lancaster for game 1. So they had to do Sunday, Monday with a noon Monday game on game 5, straight onto a bus ride to get to Lancaster. So that's a tough one. But the huge thing was a lot was made of the lack of rest, but because Kynes and Mort did so well as they're both starters, they were, they pitched games 1 and 2 together.
Yeah.
They did not use a single reliever for that game. And they, the offense helped out, gave them that breathing room where they could afford to do that. And yeah, man, they really look good. I know we haven't started necessarily talking about it yet, but that definitely has already paid dividends in the Lancaster series. Like it was noticeable.
Yeah. So then I guess we already kind of mentioned like I looked dead and we talked a lot about them last week, so we won't touch on them much this week. But High Point wise, just looking at them for their season, I mean, it's gotta be disappointing being in High Point because it's a lot of repeats.
Keeps happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it feels like you get so close every year, and they always put out a good team, a quality team too. And it's either they just missed the postseason, they just miss winning a championship, they just miss advancing. Like every time it's like they're that close and they just can't quite get over the hump. And that's got to be so frustrating as a team. And the thing is too, the right pieces are in place and the right people are calling the shots because you keep getting in this situation, keep getting put in this position. But it's just like when it comes down to like a 3-game set, 5-game set, you're really at the mercy of just how things go. And when you're playing another really good team, like it sometimes just comes down to who's feeling it that night. And like it just got to be a frustrating thing to be in that High Point position.
Yeah. And this is not me saying this is what's wrong with that team. And I'm not even saying there is something wrong with that team. As I said already, it's kind of a crapshoot. When to get in the playoffs. But my theory on it is that High Point does an extremely good job when it comes to playing the other team that has depth and is greater than the sum of its parts. Like it's a lot. You don't get a lot of major leaguers on that team. You don't have a lot of big names. Like you have some really good pitchers in particular, and like some good lineup pieces. But like you typically it's not Long Island rolling out a team full of major leaguers. It is a thoughtfully put together team, which is, relies on guys who don't have experience to fill roles right alongside of guys that do have a lot of experience and, it's a major league time. But I wouldn't say they've got any guys who stand out as like, I don't know. I don't want to say that because like they obviously have some great players. I'm trying to find the right way to go about it. I guess
they don't have that game breaker.
Their average player is better than the average player. Like if you were to average the level of play throughout the roster, it's higher than just about any other team in the league. However, they don't have some of those guys, like you said, game breakers who
they like
in a playoff game, one-off game, you can be like, this guy has a high likelihood to take this over. You have one game, so everyone's got one shot to try to be like, I'm the guy in this game. I'm taking this. And you're seeing there are teams where there are guys there are multiple guys, honestly, on Gastonia's lineup who've just been crushing. But I think High Point, they need contributions from more people in order to capitalize on it. And in a 1-game or a 3-5 game series, one person can make a huge impact, and you need, you only have so many. I'm trying to phrase it. Damn it! It's like
if I could just jump in on it,
game, you better get a guy who's real good at throwing that one dart.
It feels like to me, it's almost like looking at like the 2015 Met team. That was a team that overachieved a lot, but it was because everybody on the team kind of pulled their weight. They did their job and we all got through. But at the deadline when they got Cespedes, it was like, okay, we got our one guy that we know when we look down the order, if we could just get one or two guys on for him, he's going to drive in a run or two. We know we have a guy. That's our guy that when we're down and he's up, something's going to happen here. We don't know what it's going to be, but he's going to make a play. He's going to do a thing. It feels like that where High Point doesn't have their Cespedes guy. They don't have that guy where it's like, okay, we look down and it's like, if we're not all up on our A game today, we know that guy's B game is our A game, so we'll be okay. They don't have that security blanket to go back to. And even still, like, I've seen it with Met pitching. I've seen it with a lot of Indy Ball pitching, where it's like pitching can only do so much for you. They can keep a one-run game, but if you're not putting up 2 runs, it doesn't matter if you lost 1-0 or you lost, like Lancaster did the other night, 12-3. It doesn't matter. It's like, okay, great, still a loss in the postseason. And it means something different in the regular season where you can get away with, like, okay, it's a close loss, so, like, pieces are spared or things can be done differently. You need a game breaker. You need that guy. And when you don't have that, whether it be like an Indy Ball ringer type or a former major leaguer or whatever it may be, it's going to be hard to win in the postseason where it comes down to, like, okay, everything's like, every micro event's a major event now.
Yeah, and also talking about, like, your A game versus your B game. And it's also having guys where if they're on their A game, like, you ain't losing.
Yeah.
Like that type of player. And High Point typically doesn't. They do have some guys who are real damn good, and like over the course of the season put up some wild numbers, but it just,
The hockey analogy is...
Gastonia's got a lineup that will just change, like half those guys, or more than half those guys, will just change the game on you if you get one good swing on it. It's crazy.
The hockey analogy for this would be they have a lot of second line wingers, a lot of middle 6 depth, really good players, but they can't log the first line minutes. They can't go against like the top tier best of the best. They're just not able to do that. At their best, They're not able to. Because when the best are on their best, when you have the first line guys at their best, they're just going to run through them because the difference is just so great.
I follow. Okay. Yeah.
Want to talk about the championship series so that way we can wrap this up quickly?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Gastonia, Lancaster. Lancaster won game 1, 3-2 because poor fundies. And then Gastonia came out and was like, hey, remember this? Where we kicked the living hell out of you? That's what we do here. And then it was a 12-3 game. They split. Now they're going back to North Carolina to presumably end this shit. Because from inning 4 on in game 2, it was what we could clinically and terminologically correctly describe as an ass kicking.
Yeah, and the bigger issue for Lancaster is, like, they weren't real impressive beyond that either. But, I mean, I was posting about it, like, their, expected runs created based off what they're doing at the plate was like 2 or 3, kind of depending on how you squint until your head. And across 2 games, it's just not good enough. They had they scored 0 earned runs, in game 1, and they got away with it with a win. They had, what did they land at score-wise? I literally have the scorecard in the other room there, but boy, I've seen a lot of baseball over the past week or so.
Which one?
Oh my God, we are into the 29th already. Good Lord, sorry.
Yeah, that's happened a while
And then
ago.
they scored, so in 2 games, they've scored 2 earned runs. It's just not good enough. And
yeah,
I'm looking at the lineup. It's funny, both these teams I think are more flawed than the teams that came to the party last year. Like Lancaster, I see a lineup that just has more holes and less pop and like less consistency. They're not getting good at bats from Trayvon Robinson right now. They're not getting good at B's from Melvin Mercedes right now. Ariel Sandoval's disappeared. So it's just also guys going cold at the wrong time. But you're starting, when a guy goes cold, you start to see, like,
I mean, I would venture to say maybe that Lancaster just wasn't that good of a team. Like, is that just possible?
I mean, yeah. I mean, they didn't play. Let's be honest. The Ducks, in my opinion, had errors that cost them most of the runs they allowed in the first 2 games in that series as well. Now, look, we're talking about a team that just won 10 games in a row until last night.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're seeing some flaws. One of my concerns with them was they do have what I would call like what you just said, the hockey analogy. That's Lancaster's pitching staff.
A lot of second line players.
Yeah, and but Gastonia does a good job of they got some dogs out there, and they can, like they did in Game 5 with High Point, they can take the game over. Like they have guys, they pulled in like Zach Westcott, who's a great example of a guy who he rolls in with like a 6 ERA or whatever, but like he has the potential to take over a game if he's feeling it. He was feeling it last night. It's great. Like there's not a lot of that coming from the Lancaster side right now. And honestly, there's not a lot of variety coming out of that pen. It feels like a lot of the guys are sitting around like the low 90s, high 80s of velo. Other than Garrett Granite, a lot of them are throwing from similar arm slots. Like, I don't know. It feels like unless they have a really good stopper game in Game 3, this feels like a series that could spiral on them. On the flip side, Gastonia, I think also they're not as good as they were last year. If I'm honest, like just watching them, I remember marveling last year watching Gastonia how good they were at fielding. They were so slick and they're so fast. And I remember that was the team that stole a ridiculous number of bases. But it is not this team. They are a little less sure-handed. They're a little slower-footed, but they can hit the hell out of a baseball, man. And every single guy in that lineup looks like a threat. So, yeah, it's not. I think both teams aren't as good as they were last year, but I think Gastonia regressed in a way that at least improved one of their strengths, which I think they could have used a little more consistent pop through their lineup last year. And I think it cost them in that High Point series in the playoffs last time around, not this time. And I think Lancaster, while they improve with some speed a little bit, I think across the board, they are less than they were last year. And that's starting to get revealed.
I mean, Gastonia too, also for those guys, they lost a lot of big pieces, some to the Savannah Bananas, some to just general attrition. But also keep in mind, they're also dealing with a lot more off the field. I mean,
very true.
That's got to factor in sooner or later too. Just like when they win, and I know you mentioned this on Twitter too, like some people were like, oh, does the Atlantic League not want Gastonia to win given everything that's happened? And you're like, yeah, well, maybe they're hoping that's going to get it together, at least raise the value of the franchise here, so maybe somebody will take them. But, like, I feel bad for those guys, too, because, like, even if you win, like, you're going to win in Gastonia and whatnot, and given everything that happened, it's got to feel kind of conflicting. Like, you're not thinking about that in the moment, but when you look back, you're kind of like, for that org, really?
Yeah, but if they do manage to pull it off, like they have a good relationship with their fans from what it seems, and those guys have all kind of been through a bonding experience with all this. So, I mean, at least there's
trauma bonding.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, yeah. I think all in all will be a positive if they can pull it off. Yeah, I mean, 7 out of the 9 batters in the lineup for Gastonia are above average in OPS for the league, so it's pretty good. And the other one of the other two is Jake Hoover, who's been former Barnstormer, by the way, who's been crushing. He's got a 970 OPS in the playoffs.
Damn. So, yeah, Game 3 is tonight, meaning Friday the 29th. Game 4 will be release day on the 30th of September, and if there's a Game 5, it'll be October 1st, and that will be the last bit of Indy Ball for the year. So, see how that turns out. I think we're both pretty much in agreement that's going to be Gastonia.
Run that by me again?
We're in agreement on who's going to win the Atlantic League Championship, correct?
Oh. Yeah, I feel Gastonia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, I thought for whatever reason I thought you said in 3, and I was like, no, Lancaster did get that one game. So that's why I was like, I was hesitant to commit. I don't know why I read it that way.
I'm the one that knows which teams got swept and did not get swept.
Hey. My bad.
Well, don't worry. It's Saturday now, so.
Oh my God. Don't mess with me like that, because I will straight sleep right through work tomorrow. Okay.
Let's go to predictions.
Anyway.
Predictions. I got Gastonia wins in 5 after giving away another game. I don't know if it's going to be game 3 or 4, but I feel like they give away 1.
I'll give you that. I think 5, and I think game 5 isn't even close.
That's exactly. kind of like a High Point vibe.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. I got Fargo fails to make the Champions Baseball League final. I feel very good about that.
Yeah, I feel better about that than ever.
Yeah. And then I have, for my final prediction, Gastonia players get stiffed on champagne and rings.
Oh, definitely rings. I think there'll at least be champagne.
See, here's the thing. I don't know. Champagne costs money, and their credit's no good.
Yeah, I feel like the league will help them facilitate that one. The league's already paying the players.
See, here's the thing, though. Like, when they won and got to the final, I didn't see any champagne there. I just saw beer. And normally the champagne...
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I think there will be champagne, but there'll be like a case of champagne, and the rest will be beer.
Okay.
Which basically is like, yeah, they'll shortchange them.
Yeah. So, like, that beer's definitely coming from the concession area, though, right?
Maybe. I hear they just their beer coolers, too. So,
Jesus.
I get a lot of updates every time there's a home game.
That's neat that you mentioned, because that brings us into our first prop.
Okay.
How many texts do you receive about Gastonia problems for the rest of this series? It's at 8.5 from 8.5 different people, that is. Because I assume you're going to get more than 8 texts.
I do think they'll be on their best behavior because the league is watching. And, I mean, I didn't get as many complaints, I feel like. Not complaints, but like little updates last week necessarily because Rick White was in town.
Okay.
But I do think...
At this point, nobody has anything to lose.
Think probably 6, maybe 7, which is down from the usual average.
Okay, so that's the under. Taking the under.
Yeah. But also, like, usually I'm not getting complaints about things that are pre-existing things that have already been an issue. So, like, it's just how many new issues will there be?
Here's the thing. I think, A, people have a lot less to lose now. End of year. What are they going to do? Fire me after not paying me? Oh, wow. First off. Secondly,
right.
Championship circus now. So there is things that got to get facilitated that are definitely not going to go according to plan. And thirdly, again, like, I see this being an issue. I don't know why. It's just because, like, organizationally, with the exception of, like, 3 people, I have lost pretty much all faith in that organization. So, like, and really the people I have faith in are on the player ops side, so they're not responsible for the shit show. Their end of things is going well.
Yeah, and, like, staffing, you know, it's impossible in the playoffs already, and, like, they already don't have enough staff because they didn't pay people, and they let people go.
Yeah, so that's why I'm taking the over.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Yeah. I think I might still get the over on how many complaints.
All right. Really, it's going to be 8 or fewer or 9 or more is really the question.
Damn, 8 is a lot.
But it is a big weekend.
It could literally be right on 8. I'm going to go 8 or fewer.
So 8.5 was a good number to pick.
I'm just feeling it's going to be a lot of ones that you're like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever, of course. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is I picked a great number again.
Yeah, again, dude, you kill me on these.
Yeah.
Drives me nuts.
That means I know I'm already low on this number, so I messed this one up. I'm going to stick with it. Manager changes we see over the next 2 months. Okay. 4.5 or more.
Oh,
it's over. More. It's over.
Yeah, man.
I messed this one up too.
You might be able to double that.
That's the thing. I thought about 8 for a minute there, and I was like, 8 though. I was like, I think a lot of people are just going to stay complacent for now.
It's possible. You might, yeah. I mean, it's not unreasonable. Complacency is popular.
Exactly. Like, that's the thing too.
Around these parts.
Yeah, that also I figure, if there's economic uncertainty, do you want to deal with buying out a manager contract or having to hire a new one?
There's also double you know, double you don't. Like, rather stick with the one that, you know, maybe this year will get better.
Exactly. That, and also if you were passably good to the point where it's like, you're not costing us anything, like, why rock the boat?
Yeah, not wrong.
So, like,
I'll follow you there.
I'm still taking the over. I think we're going to have at least 5 manager changes, which would mean, like, a team getting a new one would be like Brockton.
Yeah, it'll be over for sure.
Yeah, so. That's all there is in that segment. That's all we got for this week. Somehow it was only 2.5 hours, which it felt longer than that. And I'm sure when I edit this, it's going to be much shorter than that. So we'll find out how much gets cut off of this show. Hockey Talk's probably going to go, unfortunately. Canadian geography quiz may leave. And there was another really good detour in there that I forget about, which probably will have to go. But that's unfortunate. So
life is suffering, man.
It really is. What do you want to plug here before we leave? Maybe
I
LinkedIn?
would like. Oh God, I'll say I got one thing, which is shame to hear about Brooks Robinson. My Brooks Robinson story is that my grandpa, who is a sort of conservative older man, he's a federal judge in Philly for years, so he's like very serious and he doesn't give out compliments lightly or freely. And he was out one day and he was home early and we were out playing pepper in the backyard, and I was like pretty short-handed. I played a lot of baseball as a kid and I was cleaning up pretty well. And he was like, "Oh man," like listen to me. I was like, "Brooks Robinson out here." And I was like, "Who's that?" And he was like, "Oh, like the human vacuum cleaner, the best third baseman to ever do it." And I was like, "Wow, cool. Like, that's awesome, man. Like, really, that's a hell of a compliment, like, for my grandpa, too." Mm-hmm. And then, like, probably a couple years later, maybe it was like Ken Burns baseball or something was on. I finally saw, like, Brooks Robinson playing some ball. And that is the first time I learned that sometimes people just compliment you to be nice. It doesn't mean it's true. Because, nah, man. Nah. So, yeah, there's that. And, I guess, the other one is I'm going to need people to, you know, give me thoughts and prayers because I was just checking my sister-in-law. Is that what it is? Something like that.
There you
Brother-in-law's wife.
Yeah.
Her Facebook to try to stalk what date they ended up getting married on because we forget because we're bad people.
Yep.
And I found out that like up until super recently, she was like definitely like hawking like every one of those like sketchy products. That's like definitely. Yeah, so now I got to not bring that up at Thanksgiving. So everybody's going to have to try to keep me in mind on that one. Beyond that,
you shouldn't have told me that.
Oh, dude, it's going to be bad.
You know I'm going to be texting you like the Wednesday and Thursday of Thanksgiving, like just random about, like, bullshit weird products.
Protein powders.
You're like, can I interest you in supplements?
Oh, dude, yeah, right?
Can I interest you in these pills here? They're going to cure your insomnia. They're not FDA regulated, but don't worry about that.
I'm the only family member not in their group chat. Like, I'm already barely clinging on to this. So I got to not do that.
What I just heard is you need to wear the flannel to Thanksgiving.
Bro, I might need to tape that ring on everything. Yeah, we'll see.
Indy Ball pod on everything. And on that note...
Another proud chapter, huh?
Yep. On that note, don't forget to play ball.